Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. So in this video today we're going to be stripping down the beaver graveyard vampire crab paludarium and building a brand new paludarium for my vampire crabs in a biotope style. So if you're not familiar with biotope styles, they're about as close as you can get to where the creature actually comes from in the wild. So in this case, Southeast Asia. To strip down the entire tank took about 6 hours, and most of that was actually capturing baby crabs. This here is all the baby crabs that came out of this tank. There's a couple of different generations here based on size. And believe it or not, there's at least, well, almost 100 crabs in this container. If you haven't seen the original build video of the beaver graveyard, I'll leave that linked in the description, so definitely check that out, then come back to this one. Now we'll move straight on to the new build. As this paludarium is going to have a stream flowing through it, I'm adding a small pump which will allow water to be circulated from one side of the tank to the other without any flow issues. The tank's quite long, so it does need some assistance. Once I connected the tubing to the pump, I added a filter to the intake end to stop any debris. This one is a simple stainless steel filter with a really fine weave. On the outflow end, I'm attaching a small flow adjuster from an old Sun filter. This is what my flow loop looks like, with the intake on the left and the outflow on the right. With the pump connected, I added the land and water barrier. Remember, vampire crabs primarily live on land, so an 80% land, 20% water split is required. I'm just going to be using greystone for this, which I acquired from an old roadwork pile near my house. This took a few hours to get perfect, so I'll just skip ahead to the finished product. Take as long as you want for this process because it's really important and you definitely want it to look good. After I completed the rock barrier, I added the clay balls, aka leca. This will keep the future soil layer out of the water and act as a mechanical filter. It will also be home to beneficial bacteria which will help keep the water clean and healthy via the nitrogen cycle. If you're not sure about the nitrogen cycle, I highly suggest you Google it or watch some videos on YouTube. It's super important, so make sure you get it right. Next, I added substrate to the water section of the tank, and for this, I'm just using gravel, nothing special. It's recycled from the beaver graveyard as well, so it's already home to beneficial bacteria, and will give the tank a nice jump start. With the water section sorted, I added weed matting to keep the soil out of the clay balls. This is super important as you don't want nutrients causing nitrite and nitrate spikes in the water. Once the weed matting was in, I added a nice pile of soil. Again, this is from the beaver graveyard. It already has worms and other animals in it. I like to reuse things to keep costs down, plus it's already home to beneficial creatures such as springtails, worms, and a ton of other things. If you haven't watched the original beaver graveyard build, this soil is just an organic bonsai soil mix, but you can use any organic soil you want as long as it doesn't have fertilizers and is pesticide free. With the base of the tank completed, I started adding plants. For the vampire crab biotope theme I'm going to primarily be using ferns and moss. All of these are reused from my old tank, so again it keeps the costs down. I've just broken them into smaller pieces to get the best spread along the back of the tank as I can. The plan is for them to spread and creep and grow and become nice and dense along the back, and this species of fern seems to creep really nicely, and it should spread quite fast. After I planted all the ferns, I started experimenting with hardscape. For this, I'm using old logs and pieces of wood I collected from the forest near my house. Some of the stuff is also from my old tank. If you do plan to collect wood from the forest and other things, it's best to soak whatever you collect in water for about 30 minutes, just to evict any spiders, centipedes, or anything else that might be lurking inside. It isn't 100% foolproof, but it gets rid of most of them, and anything left the crabs will kill and eat pretty quickly. The last thing you want is for a spider or a centipede to escape your tank and be crawling around your house. With the hardscape mostly done, the next part of the process is to add water. For this, I'm just using dechlorinated tap water, and I'm only filling the water section until it's about half an inch or a few centimeters below the soil layer. You just don't want the soil to be sitting in water because it will cause problems. With the water in and the pump running perfectly, it's time to start adding the finishing touches of moss and some extra details such as sticks and dead leaves. For a true biotope style, I would have to use leaves from Southeast Asia, but for this I'm just going to be using oak leaves. They're a good enough substitute and I already know they're crab safe. So if you do need to use leaves and you have oak trees around, they're a great option to use. They're also free. With the land section complete, I added aquatic plants. For this I'm primarily using Boost, so Bucephalandra, and some Salvinia for floating plants. Salvinia is a great plant to use to keep the water quality perfect, and the crabs do love to eat it as well, so it serves two important roles. Even if it isn't 100% native to vampire crabs' native environments, it will make maintaining your paludarium and feeding your crabs a hell of a lot easier. It's something that I would suggest everyone to put in their vampire crab paludariums instead of duckweed. Personally, I think this is just as important as having springtails. That's the entire process. The vampire crab biotope paludarium is complete, and we can now start adding our crabs. Obviously, I'm going to be reintroducing my current cast of Geosesama Danella crabs, so these are the most common ones in the hobby. Not sure if I pronounced it correctly, but it is what it is. They're basically purple crabs with yellow backs and yellow eyes. So the yellow on their backs kind of varies a little bit with age and diet, but it will start to get more prominent as they get older. And with the yellow eyes, it seems to be a genetic trait. Some of them have way more yellow eyes than others, so it's not standard across all the crabs. A lot of them will just have white eyes. I also forgot to count how many I added, so if you do happen to count them, let me know in the comments. And if you paid extra close attention, let me know how many males and females there were. Fast forward 3 weeks and the crabs have settled into their new home very well. There was a little bit of brawling early on while everyone settled in and found their territories, which is when Kevin got attacked and lost both of his claws, but he's been the only victim so far and everyone else seems to be doing really well. We're also back to hand feeding. Not all of my crabs are this carefree, but a good portion of the males won't even get out of the way when I try to add something to the tank or move things around. Sometimes I actually have to chase them away to get stuff done. This isn't typical behavior for these crabs. A lot of people will add vampire crabs to their paludariums and not see them for months. But with captive bred ones, they really aren't all that fazed by people. Especially if you hang around the tank when they're growing up as babies. They get really used to people really quickly. Now, normally I like to wait about 3 months before filming how things are going with the tank, but sadly I had to move apartments within a few weeks of finishing this build, so you're going to see it with just under a month of progress. And sadly, by the time I publish this video, it will already be dismantled and I'll have started a new project. Kind of a shame because this one was really starting to take hold and the crabs were really starting to behave well and enjoy their new scape. Interestingly enough, I've already had babies in this tank. You might have seen one of my posts about it. If not, you can scroll through the channel. As for the lighting, I'm still using the same lighting as I did on the beaver graveyard. I haven't even had to configure any of the lighting settings, so it's working exactly the same as it was on the beaver graveyard and working really well. Anyway, that's pretty much the build story so far. As always, I'll leave you a nice little cinematic at the end of this video, so make sure you stick around for that. And if you want to see more projects like this, don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out some of my older videos, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers everyone!